Welcome back. In the previous chapter, we learned how to display data in SQL Server. We also learned how to filter data with and without aggregate, how to use group by functionality and its uses. Let's start chapter 9. In this chapter, we will learn about different types of constraints, including primary and foreign keys. Let's log into our server. In the Object Explorer window, expand our databases. We are working with Clinical System Database, which we created in one of our previous chapters. Expand that and then expand tables. We created these tables in our previous chapter. So let's start with the primary key. The primary key is assigned to a column where the data is unique in each row. Let's create a couple of tables first. If I go to my desktop, tables, so here I've got these two tables which I'm going to create. Control C, new query window, and paste them there. So this is our first table, dim patient, and second is dim urgency. I will provide the code for these two tables in the description of this video for you to exercise. Execute that first, then execute that part. Right, so both the tables are created. If we go to our databases, just refresh that, look at the tables, and we got dim urgency and dim patient table there. Let's close this down and let's see what's inside these tables. Select all from clinical system .dbo and then name of the table. Execute that. So we have patient ID, name, age, city, and urgency ID. And let's copy this, paste into here. We only need to change the last bit. So it's going to be dim urgency. What's that? Run the code. So we got urgency ID and urgency. In dim patient table, patient ID is the most suitable column, whereas urgency ID can be used from dim urgency table as a primary key. So in our code, we have already managed to create primary key for patient ID is that when I expand dim patient table, in here patient ID says PK, that's primary key, and there's a little key sign there. And in urgency table, if we expand the columns, urgency ID is PK, primary key, and there's a little key sign there. So let's look at our code again. When I created this table, I provided the name of the table and name of the columns with the data type. And for patient ID, I'm saying the data type is integer, and I'm saying the value cannot be null, and then I assign it a primary key. Similarly, in urgency table, urgency ID is an integer, it is not null, and it's a primary key. As a result of the code, we have primary key there, and then in urgency, primary key there. Okay, right, so that's our primary key covered. Let's move on to our second topic. Our second topic is foreign key. So let's create a foreign key. To do that, we need to type some code. We need to alter the table, alter table, and we are going to add to our dim patient table, alter table dim patient, and let's add a constraint there, add constraint, name of the table, then name of the column is urgency, urgency ID, then underscore FK. So this is a meaningful name. First part is name of the table, second part is name of the column, and the third part is foreign key, FK for foreign key. Then we need to type REIGN foreign key, and that will be the name of the column will go in the bracket, which is urgency ID that references, where it references, it references to dim urgency table, and the column used in dim urgency table is called urgency ID. Right, so if we execute this code now, command completed successfully, and if we expand our dim patient table, go to columns. First of all, we need to refresh our database so changes take effect. Go back to dim patient table, columns, and as you can see there, this PK, that key is primary key, and this urgency ID FK mean foreign key, and there's a key sign there. So we have successfully created our foreign key. Now let's test this if it worked. So what are we going to do? We are going to insert some data, let's insert something into dim patient table. So we need to provide the name of the columns, and they are patient ID, then name, after name it was age, and I think it was city, and the last column was urgency ID. Is that? And the values we are going to add are values. So for patient ID we are adding 100, then anything for the name column, let's call this entry 5, then the next is age, we can put 0 for age, then the for city, let's put York there, that's the name of the city, and finally the urgency ID, let's put 5 there. Okay, so what will happen then if we insert this data into dim patient? Will it work? Let's execute that. Right, so we executed our query, but the system is showing an error. The insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint. Dim patient urgency ID FK, that's the one, that's the name of our foreign key. The conflict occurred in database clinical system, so we are working in our clinical system database, table dim urgency. So this is our second table, dim urgency, column urgency ID. Right, so it did not accepted urgency ID 5, and why it did not accept that, let's see what's going on in urgency table. So if we select this and run that part of the code, so the available urgency ID is 0, 1 and 2, because we have a foreign key constraint, which means our data from DIM patient has a link to DIM urgency table on urgency ID. But if we are entering number 5 and not from 0, 1, and 2, it will not accept that, because there is no urgency ID 5 in urgency DIM urgency table. So that's the reason it's not allowed. Let's try again with the correct urgency ID. Let's copy the code again, all of it, and then paste it here. Now we are going to change the urgency ID from the list 0, 1, and 2. So these are the options we have. Let's say we say urgency ID is 1, and if we run this, yeah, it worked. So it is successful. Now go back and select the patient table and see what's happening in there. So this is the row we just created now. In here, 100 is our patient ID, entry 5 is name, 0 is age, York is city, and urgency ID is 1. So this row is added, which means foreign key works. Okay, so let's see another example. In this example, we are going to test how the foreign key works. So one thing is for sure, if we provide the incorrect foreign key, it will not allow us to insert the data. But if we provide the correct foreign key, it does allow to add the data to patient table. What if we don't provide the foreign key at all? What happens? So now we just get rid of this last option, number 1, and we are just changing this patient ID because that's a primary key. It has to be unique, 101. And on this occasion, we change the name and call it null. Entry is null. Leave the age 0, and we are leaving the city as York as well. The only thing we are doing is just changing the patient ID, changing the name, and also removing the urgency ID. So if we run this, let's see what happens. Right, there are more columns in the insert statement than value specified in the value. Okay, right, so what we need to do, we need to get rid of urgency ID, because we are saying there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns for which we intend to add the data for, but in our values we are only providing value for 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are not providing value for urgency ID. So for that we need to get rid of urgency ID column from our insert statement. If we do that and run this again, so it was successful, the row has been added. So what do you think? What will be the urgency ID? Will it be 0? Will it be null? We can check in a second. Let's run this and see. Right, so what happens here is we provided patient ID 101 is there, name is entry null is there, age is 0, that's there, and city is York, that's there. And finally, we did not provide any urgency ID, so SQL Server has added null for blank or unavailable urgency ID. So that's there. Okay. Right. Finally, if you need to drop the foreign key, you are not required anymore. So to do that, you can drop it with a very simple code. You type drop, begin with alter table, and then because our foreign key is in our DIM patient table, So we copy the name of the table. The way we altered the table, the impatient, and added the constraint, similarly we are going to alter the table, the impatient, and going to drop the constraint. So that's that. Or in fact, we can just copy all of that, paste it here. Instead of add, we can just replace it with drop, and then also the name of the constraint as well. That goes there, and if we just run it, it has dropped the foreign key. So it is dropped. To test it, if it has disappeared, we just need to refresh, go to our tables, then go to the impatient columns, and you can see our primary key patient ID is still there, but our urgency ID is there, but there is no FK in the bracket, and there is no key sign there, which means our foreign key has been dropped or has been deleted. So this is how we can delete our foreign key. So that's foreign key covered.